Today's show is sponsored by Indie Film Hustle's Filmmaker Process. We provide filmmakers with professional services to get their films or series funded, finished, and distributed. For more information, go to filmmakerprocess.com. I'd like to welcome to the show Kim Jackson and Jake Craven. How you guys doing?
Great.
Doing great.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on. You guys are doing some really interesting stuff with your company Breaker. And I saw the film by Alex Winter about blockchain because I've obsessed about blockchain pretty heavily and about NFTs and all that kind of good stuff. And then you guys reached out to me and I was like, oh, interesting. I'd like to see what you guys are doing. So for the audience who is not familiar with this new magical world that is blockchain and crypto and tokenization, all this kind of stuff, what is blockchain?
Wow. That's a ginormous question. So in relationship to media and technology and film, I think we'll put it in that context.
Sure.
Jake, right? We'll stay in that avenue.
Yeah.
But essentially, blockchain is the technology that what we're all familiar with as Bitcoin runs on, right? So Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency and it operates on blockchain technology. So at the simplest form, it's a protocol that runs programs. And so at a basic level, the programs, why they're different than centralized systems is because this network is called decentralized. Mm-hmm. And that means where there's network, there's data, and where there's data, there's network, unlike centralized systems that we currently work with. So when you apply that to basic concept to certain maybe challenges and problems that different industries like media and film and television have, we have been building and are launching products that allow for media to be, rights, revenue, and royalty of media to be tracked via blockchain technology, which allows for a decentralized network of data. So I'm going to stop there because Jake can go a little more specific into what Breaker is building from that more general description.
Yeah, thanks that's a good intro into the big picture of blockchain. How I like to refer to, if someone's asking what is blockchain, what is a blockchain? It's really just a record of information, right? And what makes it different from other records that we use, if you think Google Sheets or Excel or just databases, right, is that when you enter in a new row of data, that information is encoded so that nobody can go in and change the information later. So it's locked in place and set in stone. In addition, instead of the data being stored on one person's hard drive or one company's servers, it's held and hosted and maintained by hundreds of people all around the world. So when we say decentralized, it's what we mean. There's people all over the world that are hosting and maintaining this network and this record of information. So no one party is in control of that information. And it's all open source so that anyone at any point can go and view this record. They can pull up a website and, put in some information and actually see, proof that information was logged and entered into this record. Now, it's all done using, cryptography and long numerical chains that the average person can't decipher, or any person can decipher really. But what it does is it creates this opportunity where when you have data that's coming in from one source, instead of that data just living on someone's computer and then some human is like entering data and changing the information and sending it via an email, that information is automatically recorded and set on this public record, the blockchain. that people can go back to.
So to simplify it, it's basically a database that has pages in a ledger. Those pages are blocks inside of that chain, and they're hosted. There's thousands of copies of that exact thing around the world. So even if you hack into my computer and try to do something, you can't, because there's multiple copies all around the world that could be verified by thousands and tens of thousands of people around the world as this continues to grow and grow. Is essentially, and you can't adjust. And then, like any chain, if you lock it in, the next chain, if you affect this chain, it would affect the rest of the entire chain. So that means it's literally locked in stone, in digital stone, and cannot be adjusted. So that's the security aspect of it. Is that a fair explanation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think most people, you don't need to be tech savvy to reap the benefits of this or to appreciate how all this technology sort of works. I think a lot of times, especially with the blockchain world, we kind of get a little too, we start talking about all the tech and code and all that stuff when, really, if you think of the internet and email, people don't need to know how email works in order to like reap the benefits of email. So, there's always this sort of element of the blockchain world where things get too technical too quickly, but we try and just break it down into kind of very clear concepts. And I think that's an important element of just understanding that, normally when you send an email to someone, the record of that email is being held by the company who owns your email address, right? The email server, like Google. If Google were to cease existing tomorrow, you would lose all of that information that's on your email because it's stored by this private entity. So what blockchain does is takes that data and puts it up in a way where it's not subject to like one private entity who can take and use that information however they want, or just disappear and delete it.
Fair enough. Now, there are, and obviously the origination of blockchain was with Bitcoin. And Bitcoin coming on, and that's when the whole concept of blockchain came to be, I think, in 2008, in December of 2008, if I'm not mistaken. And there are multiple blockchains out there because a lot of people think there's just the one blockchain. There's multiple blockchains out there. Bitcoin has its own blockchain, which is based around its cryptocurrency. But then another blockchain came out, which is arguably the silver to Bitcoin's gold, which is Ethereum. And Ethereum was created as a blockchain, not as much for money, though it has a component of that, but as a platform to kind of piggyback on. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. Its intention is to have more functionality and more dimension than just operating currency, which is Ethereum is the operating protocol that we're building our applications on top of.
Now, go ahead, Chip.
I was going to say, to go back to your analogy of saying, Ethereum is the silver to Bitcoin's gold. I think a better way to think of it is Ethereum is the oil to Bitcoin's gold, because Bitcoin is an asset that can be used as currency.
Fair enough.
Ethereum is a system for running applications and to be built upon.
Now, with that. With Ethereum, because there is a monetary aspect to Ethereum. There is an Ethereum coin which runs everything. So with Ethereum, some of the issues that I've been hearing and seeing myself in the NFT world is that it takes a long time for these things to get all these processes to get registered because it takes time to physically get it on there. Also gas fees and things like that. Can you talk about that? Because that kind of goes into a larger conversation about what you guys are doing and how you're going to kind of, because we're at the beginning, and I've been telling people this, we're basically in the internet 1994 right now. People are still trying to figure out how to build a website. People are still trying to figure out JPEG because it's not, I remember downloading an image that took 4 days to download one picture because no one understood JPEG yet. Things like that. Yeah. So we're in that world right now. So there are these kind of issues that and that we're all figuring out and will be figured out in the next 5 years, or not, if not faster, because there's so many people going in there. But what do you think? How are you approaching that? Can you explain gas fees and the speed and things like that with Ethereum? Because there's just so many people jamming into it.
Jake?
Yeah. Well, in order to understand, and if you're someone that's listened to this and you're not familiar with sort of how blockchain actually works, when we say that we're recording a new piece of information or data on the blockchain, what we're doing is you're submitting, let's say, transaction with this data, and then all these people that are maintaining this network, in order to get people, and this is what makes blockchain innovative, is in order to get people to actually maintain a network of information and to update it, you have to incentivize them, right? They're not just going to do it out of altruism and because they like the idea of a decentralized network of information. So they have to get paid to maintain all of this, right? And so they're just using computing power in their computers. But what happens is they get paid a fee to update the blockchain, to record your data, right? Like you pay a fee for a notary public, if you will. And so that fee is what's called a gas fee. So when you go to transact on blockchain, or you go to use an application that is interacting with the blockchain in some way, you have to pay a gas fee in the form of cryptocurrency that goes to the individual who's actually like logging that transaction. So that's what keeps the system going and moving forward is, people are being incentivized because they're getting paid to do it. And that's what we refer to gas fees. Now there's a lot of development that's taking place and a lot of different approaches to blockchain technology and updates. The original mechanism of it was built and served one purpose, but it had limitations. We're at a phase now where there's a lot of updates being made and switching to some different systems that are more efficient and cost less and are faster. And those are going to be implemented, and some of them are already implemented. Some are going to be going in the next couple of years. So the whole landscape is changing pretty dramatically right now in terms of just like the nuts and bolts and how it works. But for us, the key thing is looking at just that underlying the value proposition of just a blockchain, and then this core concept of what we like to call tokenization.
What is tokenization?
Well, Alex, I want to say one thing. You have it right. It's early days. It's like 1996 in blockchain right now. So it's like the dial-up days.
So
yeah. Things take
2400 baud. Yeah, 2400 baud. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's early. It's still early days. It really is. And so, the architects of Ethereum are well aware, and they are, they're I listen to conversations on Clubhouse that, they pop in and out of, and, they're very much aware, and there's solutions that they're working on, and they're very confident in the future of the Ethereum protocol being able to handle the number of transactions that would be necessary for it to work properly for the general public, just like the internet had to figure that out too. So yes, so it's definitely a good horse to bet on.
No, exactly. It's like if you would have told me, like, this internet thing's really going to take off, and I mean, I still remember logging in with my AOL free disk that I got. Yes, I got my free connection to the internet.
Yeah, and it like made the sound.
Oh no, it was
great sound effect. It was so fantastic.
It was.
And then you couldn't wait, and we just sat there and we waited. And the little chat rooms would come up in the windows, and you'd be talking to people in like Vietnam, and it was just like amazing time. It was just like such a good, incredible time. And then I put in my name and didn't work, and getting your email address for the first time on AOL. I tried like a zillion things, and then I ended up putting some really random thing in there, just like, okay, I give up. And then of course it took it. So then that was my AOL. My AOL address was like something weird and random for a very long time. But yes, it's sort of like that. And I recommend this really great, it's about 25-minute video that Vinay Gupta recorded some years ago that essentially talks about the history of computer science leading to blockchain. And it is super, super important, especially those who maybe came a little bit later in the game and don't maybe have holes in their knowledge of computer science leading up to today. It was it's like one of those things that we have a required viewing for people who work with us, because it's very important to understand this moment in time of computer science, which is where we are, which is extremely exciting.
No, exactly. Please send me a link to that. I would love to put that in the show notes for everyone to watch as well. But I feel that blockchain is as important, if not more important, than the internet. And that is such a massive statement to say. I'm not alone in that, by the way. I'm sure there's many. I think both of you agree with it. It's seeing the vision of where it can go. It's not there right now, but seeing the vision of where that can go. I mean, cryptocurrency, and we can talk about cryptocurrency and that.
It's a long game.
In 100 years, we're all going to be dealing with some form of cryptocurrency. I mean, the dollar, paper money, and all of that I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, it keep going for the next 100 years. I think that's a very archaic way of doing things. And I think that the DeFi movement and the decentralization and all that stuff is great. But Jake, remind me, did you answer the question on tokenization?
No.
Okay. I was like, I don't remember him answering it. So tokenization, because I don't know that's a big part of what you guys are doing with Breaker.
Yeah. So, to bring it all back around to film and entertainment and how blockchain can be used in the entertainment industry, you have to think of this concept. And this is when people hear of NFTs or they hear of, different companies and tokens, what we're really talking about is taking a piece of intellectual property and creating a digital identifier with it, which is what we call a token. So it is a unique code that is an address that is recorded on the blockchain that is then associated back to that asset. So what we're doing is taking, let's say, a film and creating a digital token that represents that film and the ownership shares of that film at the same time. So instead of having just like a contract, then each person has their copy of the contract, and you kind of have to rely on attorneys to confirm all of that, and then some accountant will look at it and determine, okay, this person gets this amount. What you're actually doing is you have this digital identifier that's recorded on the blockchain, but with that is an associated smart contract, which is another key concept in the blockchain world, which is you're taking the terms of, let's say, a film finance agreement, and you're turning it into a logical formula saying, if X amount of dollars, then it goes to this person, and then any money after that goes to these people. And so now when something happens, let's say there's a transaction or someone sends money to or records it on the blockchain via a platform, that token, so the asset, right, the money flows back to that address. It's associated with it, tied to that address, and then the code based on the smart contract knows how to then split up the money and who to send it to automatically because of the terms that you put in place. So what we're doing is looking at how we can tokenize an asset, right? Take intellectual property, create a digital token that represents it and the shares in the back end, and then also apply a smart contract where we can then automate the flow of revenue and the management of rights for that underlying asset.
In a complete transparent way where anybody can go in and look at it, as opposed to the shady world of distribution today.
You said it.
Exactly. So instead of relying on an entity where it really comes down to some accounting associate manually putting numbers in a spreadsheet, and even if everyone is acting with the best of intentions, they're still gonna run the formula incorrectly or miss
human error,
type a number, all this stuff, and it's just so much error and so much money is lost, and all because of the just sort of human and really archaic methodology and practices for entertainment accounting and rights management, which really hasn't changed since this all started in the turn of the century.
Right.
So this is, a way of bringing this new technology to create more efficiency, automation, transparency for what is otherwise a very inefficient process.
And that is some of the key elements that you're using are tokenization and then smart contracts. Can you mentioned smart contracts. Can you explain what smart contracts are to the audience?
Well, yeah, smart contracts are really, it's a set of code that is embedded in the token. But really what that code is you're taking the terms of an actual paper contract that you sign and then taking the logic of like the flow of funds and who receives what and when, and then applying that into actual like logic, like math of, and that's really all a smart contract is. It's that logical formula that is reflecting agreements between parties that are done outside.
Like the waterfall.
It's a normal waterfall.
Splitting funds, on the back end.
Correct. First in financiers get first monies in, all that kind of stuff. But it's broken up through using basically smart contracts in the blockchain. So when A happens, then B happens. And then once B is done, then it goes out to C, D, E, and F. And then you can just lay out however you want these smart contracts to play out, essentially. Correct.
So that when revenue flows in to that token from the external sources, it automatically will get split into those buckets that, this shareholder, that member, this, if you have your writer and your director or your, let's say, you have guilds that need, all of it. You can do all of the, anyone who's sharing revenue in the particular piece of content or intellectual property, it will automatically, when revenue comes in, the revenue will be pushed into all of those different entities.
Yeah, because right now there are a handful of companies around the world that do this, but in a manual way, not in and I've had those companies on the show and spoken about that. And it sounds great. Like they make sure all the unions get taken care of, and all entities are very comfortable with that because there's a centralized kind of almost escrow account that handles the money that is not being handled by anybody else. And they know that they're going to get paid because this entity is going to do it. But the way you're proposing it would be essentially humanless in the sense of it's going to be set up in a completely transparent way where you could literally log on, check your site and go, okay, this is how it's coming in. But the question I have for you is, this is all, of course, based on blockchain and cryptocurrency, because that's how these payments have to be moved through. Has to be moved through Ethereum cryptocurrency, correct? I mean, you're not writing checks, essentially, or not doing wire transfers, or are you?
No, but there is a mechanism that it can be turned into fiat. It can be turned into, USD. And so we're using a stable coin in this case. So that deals with the fluctuation that will happen with cryptocurrencies. So, when revenues come in and something gets, pushed into the token, it will be pushed into the stable coin. And then those stable coins can be held onto or transferred into, exchanges however you choose.
So this, when you say stable coin, is that an actual name of a coin, or is that just a generalized name of a coin that you are creating to make sure that if $10 comes in, $10 comes out, as opposed to $10 comes in, Ethereum bombs or explodes, and then they got $100 or
we didn't invent that.
Okay.
No, it's a mechanism that others. I mean, it's an issue, right? That's a problem, right? To pay people in crypto, just plain crypto. I mean, it's going to rise and fall in a millisecond. I mean, so how do you deal with that? So, it's been figured out, and Jake, you can shed a little bit more light on that one, because I know we're working on our SaaS product right now, and that's one of the mechanisms that we use. But no, we can't take credit for
because I've seen
inventing that. But
there is a coin that's a USD coin that just basically tracks.
That's right.
So that's the coin you're using essentially.
Yeah, so we use USDC. There are a number of other stable coins, but the core idea is, it's getting the benefits of, sending funds via the blockchain, and but without the volatility or the risk of interacting with cryptocurrency. So it's tied to the value of the US dollar. And, what we really look at is, and this is something that we encounter, there's a lot of companies that have been in this space that came around. We've been doing this for a while now. And have really learned what are the pain points and some of the limitations to really for broad adoption of this technology. And so we build tools taking those learnings and applying that. So, when you are a filmmaker, you need to be able to exploit your film anywhere where there's a revenue opportunity, right? And there's only the number of avenues that you release a film is just growing, right? Because audiences are more spread out. There are more new platforms every day, and it's important to be able to, reach those audiences wherever they are and to find those opportunities to have your film stand out. So we've built a tool that we call it an on-ramp, right? Like a fiat to crypto on-ramp. So you're able to collect payment in dollars, right? Usually it's processed via bank account transfer, so ACH. And then our technology automatically converts that to a stable coin. And by doing that, once the funds are in a stable coin, then they can be sent to the film's token, and the smart contract can then do its job, send the funds to all of the different participants, and they can then claim their share of the royalties and the revenue immediately, right then and there. So, we look at this sort of full chain of funds and how do we make it as smooth and easy as possible while still actually getting the benefits of the technology at the same time.
So if let's say you have a Netflix deal, you've got some transactional on iTunes, and you sold Germany for a few $1,000. Let's say you did all those three things. You would basically have them send checks or wires essentially into an account that then automatically turns them into a stable coin.
Well, yeah. So what it is you will, and one way to think of to kind of step back, when we talk about tokenizing a film, think of it in the way that we would go about and create like a PPM, right? If you're trying to raise private equity for a film, you need a private placement memorandum, which breaks down what is the equity structure, what is the person who's investing in the film getting, all that sort of stuff. And tokenizing the film is taking that waterfall, putting it into the smart contract and deploying that so it's recorded on the blockchain. So now you have this token that has been deployed, it's in place, and then begins time to all right, let's start collecting revenue. So for Netflix, and if you're releasing a film on iTunes, you're going through an aggregator or a distributor. Those payments most likely are going to come via an ACH transfer, right? A direct bank transfer. And so a filmmaker can then share the link to our payment portal, if you will, and that distributor or licensor can then submit, remit payment via ACH directly on that, and those funds will then be automatically associated with the filmmaker, with that film, right? And so all of the the manual, all the accounting stuff is all happening behind the scenes automatically. International, probably, good chance that might come via wire payment, but also, bank transfer. So, we're looking at, how are the ways that filmmakers actually get paid today, and how can we evolve this technology to be able to address those different use cases.
And you, as Breaker, don't hold any of the money coming in, because that's been one of the big issues with aggregators and things like that they hold the money and might misspend money. Money comes in automatically instantly once the money hits that account, turns into a stable coin, then goes down the waterfall into the thing. You guys never touch anything obviously regarding whatever the payment is for your service might be taken off the top, or there's a payment. I don't know how that works. How do you make money with this all?
So, we're providing this service, right? It's a software as a service. So, there is a mechanism of people, paying for it via you would pay for any technology that you use.
Got it.
And so, but the goal, the core goal for what we're doing, and this is something that goes back to something that you brought up, collection account management services, and one of the big hurdles with them is that they are expensive.
Very
cost prohibitive, and especially for independent film. So, us using this technology allows us to provide this service to creators at a much more affordable rate, right, than the legacy systems that are in place today.
Very, very cool.
And then, another goal that's worth mentioning here is that, is to have everyone in this ecosystem participate with blockchain technology utilizing this. So not just the content creator, but also the media companies who are distributing the work, because we talk with a lot of them and we are approaching a lot of them at the moment in very exciting conversations, because their backroom accounting is extremely inefficient, costs them millions and millions of dollars, and they lose millions and millions of dollars all the time based on just either error in accounting, or just the inability to really track stuff, especially when it starts getting complicated with multiple territories that you can imagine a piece of content will go to, especially like, Netflix now and all across the world. So the long-term goal is to, really have everyone participate in, with this software and building a bridge between the two, because it can benefit both sides. It's baby steps and it's new. So, everyone has to start to get comfortable with the concept of telling the truth, first of all.
Anyone who listens to my podcast understands my feelings in regards to traditional distributions.
Right. I'm right with you all. It's one of the reasons that this is happening is I got tired of being shortchanged. I got tired of not having revenue reports, not being able to report to my investors, and good, bad, or indifferent. You know what I mean? Like, okay, sometimes a picture doesn't, do well, but at least you have numbers to be able to, justify that and show why. But we don't even get that information. And so when we learned about the potential of blockchain on media and content, it's really what inspired myself and my co-founders to do what we're doing right now, and realizing that it is a long game, and realizing that we would be disrupting and interrupting, quite a system. But just like the internet happened, and it was undeniable, and people go, oh, I'm not going to use that, I'm not going to do that. It's one of those things where we're all going to be using it whether we realize it or not, someday soon. And so by introducing the power of this and the efficiency, I think that organically, I'm hoping, this is my pie in the sky, but I'm hoping that organically everyone just adopts this, and then we don't even have to have a conversation about the truth anymore. It just happens because it's just more efficient.
Right. And that's what that's the whole beauty and genius of blockchain, is that two strangers can do business without knowing or trusting each other. Right. And that's been the issue from the beginning of humanity. Since the beginning of time, it was like, I want to give you my goat and you're going to give me a cow, but how am I sure you're not going to kill him? Like there's no way of doing it. That's why fiat money and gold and all these kind of things have, we've tried to figure it out over the years, but in this digital platform with blockchain, it completely erases everything. And it's completely transparent.
Yeah, and we don't have to have a moral or philosophical or ethical conversation. It's just going to be It's just going to happen because it makes more sense. It's logical, and this is, like Jake just said, it's math.
It's math.
You get down to the core of all of it, and it's math. And it's just with the acceleration of technology and media in particular, it's going to make sense just from a logical perspective, because how do you account for all this content? And this content sharing, I mean, it's insane how much is out there. I mean, just from the perspective of the viewer, we're overwhelmed with choices. And if you think about it from a content creator's perspective, the competition out there is insane, and the lifespan of your content now is much, much longer and much greater and much grander than it ever was before, and it's going to just keep accelerating.
Right, exactly, and I'm in the weeds with this all the time, and when you're saying all these films are out there, most of them aren't getting paid, and it's not. It's either they're just not. They're just not. Most of them are not getting paid because of these kind of weird distribution agreements or shady practices or human error, as well, or Amazon switches from 10 cents an hour to 1 penny an hour of streaming and things like that.
Or they get acquired and somebody else buys them, and then they have a new department, and then they have to transfer all of that centralized data, and then I've got a new person and I'm looking at this for the first time and I don't know what I'm looking at. And it's just, it's insanity. It's really insanity. And when we talk to a lot of the CFOs and the accountant types people at these media companies, a lot of times the one department's not talking to the other. So the department that's doing distribution for television is not talking to the department that's doing distribution for traditional film, and they have data that's separate, and that data should be connected, and it's not being connected, and it's in the same within the same company. So the inefficiencies are getting, the gap is getting wider and wider, and so they know that something's got to give because they're losing money. And so
right.
The blockchain is an incredible solution, and we're very, very excited and very motivated by the promise of blockchain, and it's very exciting that you guys and the listeners and everyone, get this. And, it's like it's kind of boring on some level to talk about it, a blockchain, because it's like talking about JavaScript. It's like, who cares? It's like what's going on underneath of the hood. But, what you really care about is, what's the bottom line for you. And what the bottom line is understanding the that you're using is actually going to level the playing field, take away, the mistrust, and be able to give you instantaneous reporting. These are very important and powerful things, especially for independent companies that want to sustain a business and revenue model for themselves, because it's almost impossible. You'll get a bunch of funding, you'll make, half a dozen movies, and then you're closing your doors 4 or 5 years later. Mm-hmm. This happens all the time. And so there's got to be a better model, and with this technology, we hope to be able to provide that to these filmmakers and these companies.
Now, there's another thing I saw on your website in regards to financing a film. How do you use this technology in the financing game on how to get your independent project financed? Because there's some very, very interesting benefits that could possibly come from it.
Sure, it's a bit complex right at the moment. It's not black and white, as you know. I think if you're in the perfect world and in the future, I can see that you could tokenize your movie, do a token raise, just almost like crowdsourcing in a way. But the difference is that instead of getting a T-shirt, you're actually getting revenue participation in that movie, and in real time, just like we're talking about, through the same mechanisms we were just discussing. And that's in a perfect world, and that's what we envision for Toket in the future. It's not possible for various reasons right now. Really, from that perspective of we can't hold money and be a bank for people. Like, there has to sort of be that separation. And so it's not as easy. And also, on some level, it's crowdsourcing. So you're kind of faced with that same kind of situation with, the Kickstarters of the world, right? In terms of like getting people's attention to be able to, raise the amount of funds that you need for your picture. And so there is a mechanism that I could see in the future that would kind of combine those two efforts, where people, especially if you're a well-known filmmaker and you have a track record and people know you, you're already going to have a fan base. And so imagine if there was the Star Wars token, you know what I mean? Like, imagine. But all those token holders who were fans got to participate in the success, almost like the NFT type of model, right? But from more of an intellectual property and a revenue sharing model. So, Jake, I'm sure you got insight on this.
It's like equity crowdfunding, essentially, almost, but using blockchain and tokenization.
It's complicated because of KYCing and because of all of these SEC rules and regulations that are from like 1948 or something that just don't really apply to technology today. And so it makes things a bit challenging.
But how about
for this specific moment?
But what about IPOs? So wouldn't this be similar to an IPO?
Well, it would be, but we don't forget it. It's a very small pool of people who actually get to participate in IPOs, right? IPOs are not something that every person gets to participate in. We might be able to buy a stock after a bank purchases X number and then they sell it again.
No, but initial coin, an ICO, excuse me, an ICO, not an IPO, but ICO, when they, like Dogecoin, for God's sakes, or something like that, when they put out a coin, could a coin be initial coin offering? Could that be kind of like a movie, movie offering?
And that's the thing. I mean, we're at the stage, to go back to the analogy of where we are in the evolution of the technology, right? We're at the stage where, it's 1996 internet, but the SEC has caught up enough, learned enough about the internet, right, that they're on C-SPAN calling it a series of tubes, but applying their existing framework to this and causing a bit more, it's still an evolving process. So, we've gotten to a threshold where, 2017, 2018 is where you had this sort of ICO boom, and that's where the technology was very new to a lot of the regulators in countries around the world. But now, 2021, it's much more familiar. It's on the radar. So they've limited stuff to a point that you're really not seeing those happening as much right now. The coins that are released, very often it's not something where people are raising funds through a release of the coins, where people are purchasing them. It's usually more the new currencies or tokens are being utilized where they have some utility to them, and they're being distributed to a community of people who can then, use them for different purposes. But it's not being used as something to, crowdfund in the same way that it was in 2017, 2018. So, where we look at it in terms of if you're a filmmaker and you're going to raise money, I think one of the big aspects is, where's the money coming from? And you can still go out and raise equity and get investors. But what happens more often than not is you're a filmmaker, you get an investor to help you with your first film, you make that film, but from the investor standpoint, the experience of being an investor on an independent film is so bad because there isn't a lot of information, right? There's, they don't, it's not even that they didn't make their money back. It's just like it's a black hole, right? There's no data. It's very hard to get a sense of like what's going on. What is how is this money actually being used? How is the film doing? What was the value of my investment in this? And so it becomes incredibly difficult to get people to invest in a second film. And what we really see is this technology being a tool that creators can use when they go out to investors saying, look, I'm using this, and this technology ensures that you're going to have this access to information, and we're addressing these sort of pain points that a lot of film investors encounter, and that makes you as a creator a more intriguing option for someone to invest in, because there's this level of like, I don't have to trust that you're going to write me a check and pay me back. We're utilizing technology that's going to automate all of that. So you're going to get everything as soon as we do. And, that our aim is for that to be something that helps these conversations when filmmakers are talking to investors. And that's how it, right now, without getting into regulations and SEC and all that stuff, is a way today that it can be used as a tool to help with financing.
Well, where can people find out more about what you guys are doing?
Well, you can find out on our website. Breaker.io is the website. For our technology side, we have a website called tools.breaker.io. And then we also have our studio side where we produce and finance our own slate of films. And that's Breaker Studios. And actually, I'll add that those films are our own test cases. So we're using this technology to manage the revenue and the rights for the films that we're producing ourselves. So we're not just asking people to use it, and we're also not just technology people that are trying to build something for the film industry because we think the film industry is cool and sexy. We're people that happen to be technology people at the same time. I'm an entertainment attorney. And spent my career as a distributor working with new distribution mechanisms and new tools and platforms. And Kim's a producer, has been producing films her whole career. So we're also, we come from the entertainment side and have that background and knowledge that has informed how we guide this technology.
And the old joke is, how do you make millions in the film industry? You start with billions.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I was gonna say you don't. You did.
Exactly. You don't. You do not.
I mean, it's
Yeah,
it's
I mean, and you say when you define the film industry, Alex.
Well, the film industry is there's so many aspects. There's the independent film industry. There's the people who like Marvel. There's Disney. There's, then there's the back alley, predatory distributors. There's so many aspects of the film industry on the just performance side. Then there's the production side. Then there's there's so many different aspects of it. But so you can make money in the film industry. There are definitely places you can make money in the film industry. But
if you're a pirate and I've met them on every side you're talking about. I've met them in production.
Of course.
Who go, what's your budget? Okay. And then they do their own creative accounting on the production budget so they can filter money over to some other whatever. It's happened. And you're like, you know what? I'm a line producer. I know how to count. I know what things cost. You kidding me? And they look at you with a straight face. Like, what do you mean?
Craft services cost $20,000 a day on a $100,000 movie. Yeah. I don't understand.
Exactly. That's a $100 bagel. Dude, get off my back.
There's 4 extras, and you have $100,000, and for extras, it's like, what? No, the extras don't cost. Like these types of things. But yes, you have to be a pirate. You have to be a pirate. And, I've definitely made movies with my fair share of them. And I have to say it was a lot of fun. However, I want to make money. I want a business, a revenue source, that's reliable, that allows me to sustain a business model for myself. And, one of the other interesting things that I always bring up too is, a lot of colleagues who've been in the biz a long time, who have survived, longtime survivors of independent film specifically, they are coming up against, where are the rights to these films that we sold 15 years ago? Where are these? Who owns the rights to these films? Because they're expiring now. And technically they should be able to, repackage and redistribute these films, especially the sweetheart films that have, an ability to be repackaged in classics or whatever, however you want to package it. And they're finding that they have no idea where the rights live anymore, because a lot of times the companies that they first sold to were bought, the libraries were bought and sold maybe multiple times. And the resources it would take them to do the research is just it's not available to them. So they just kind of have to let things, go. And it's a missed opportunity. It's a missed business opportunity, especially if you're a long time, producer, or director, or creator. It's a lost opportunity.
And if you have smart contracts, that kind of voids that situation. If everyone's on a smart contract, like at 15 years, it automatically goes to this person's account again and blah, 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 or whatever it is.
Correct.
I mean, if everything in a magical world eventually will get there, I think we're still years away from everybody jumping on board. Because it's like the internet. Like, how long did it take? I still remember going online and going, Paramount.com. Nope. Disney.com. Nope. Like I remember those times. How long did it take before everybody jumped online, before anyone had a website? So this is the same thing. I think it's going to be faster than it did with the internet, though. And Bitcoin has kind of like done a lot of the heavy lifting over the last decade since it's come out. It's like they've kind of refined the idea. And now it's starting to pick up a little bit of steam. Would you guys agree with the whole just blockchain and everything? People are starting to become much more aware of it.
Sure.
Well, the technology's evolved to a point that it's, there's certain hurdles that we encountered in 2018 that limited our ability to do certain things that are no longer hurdles because the technology has evolved. So it's growing and improving really, really fast. And that's a great thing because we see the potential use cases and the potential is becoming the actual very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, if you remember 1996 and then you remember 2006, I mean, YouTube was a year or two old and the compression of video was horrible. And it took them another 5 or 8 years before, 720p.
Yeah.
It takes time for this to go, but I think it's a very exciting time, and I think what you guys are doing is really exciting. And there's a big learning curve coming. There's a lot of hurdles that we have to get over for everybody involved, including the old school dinosaurs and the new young kids coming up who understand this much better than any of us do.
Sure, no, for sure. But don't sell yourself short. I mean, we were there in the beginning, so we have more knowledge. Because we were at sort of the beginning of the internet craze, and
sure.
I think that being around for that and witnessing that and sort of being turned on by it. Kids today, they just automatically come into it. They don't know. They don't understand.
All they know is they do
not get.
Yeah.
Like I had a bag phone. I had a phone in my car that was in a bag. Like that was I was talking about this past weekend with somebody. Like cell phones. It was like this giant thing.
If anybody
that I
wants
had in a bag.
If anybody wants a reference to that, watch Lethal Weapon. And towards the end of Lethal Weapon, Danny Glover is outside on a bridge talking to Riggs on one of those phones.
One of those phones, and it was like $900 a minute. Like it was really, really expensive. Like it was seriously like you only it was an emergency situation,
Yeah.
But the internet it was very interesting. The whole thing. I mean, I was in college and I was dating a guy who was a computer science major at BC, and I always joke he bought me my own URL for like Valentine's Day, and I was like, where are the flowers? What is the URL?
The nerdiest romantic gesture in the history of.
But I have my name.com because of him.
Yeah,
to this day. And like, there's a million Kim Jacksons on the planet. I mean, I've ran into him. I've had people email me saying, "Can I buy my own URL?" Because and I'm like, no, are you kidding me? Like, that's amazing that I have my own URL.
Oh.
But I mean, back in the day, if I would not have thought of that, I would not have even thought about that. I was like, what's a URL? What do you mean?
I was lucky enough. I bought alexferrari.com in like late 90s. So I had a website business. I had an online business in the 90s. I used to make, I've sold the story a couple of times. I used to make like $5-6 a month. The problem was my server bills were $5 or $6 a month.
Right.
because of bandwidth. Bandwidth.
Yes.
Right.
This is it. And yes. So
and that's where we're at now.
Yes, this is where we're at right now. And, it's super cool to be talking to you. You're so knowledgeable about it, Alex. And it's really awesome because you know more than you let on that you did. So it's really cool to be conversation with you.
Like I said, I've been doing a lot of research about this because I'm really fascinated by the whole concept. And I do think it's the future of, it's gonna affect so many different industries. Our small little corner of the world, which is, we think it's really big, but the film industry is so small comparatively to medical records and just infrastructure on like tracking food and manufacturing and finding parts and all. Everything will be on the blockchain eventually. Energy, medical records, everything. I
mean, imagine like that's one of the examples I use a lot is medical records, because when people say I don't quite understand, and I say, well, think about like you go to the doctor and then your insurance changes you and you got to go to another network, and that network didn't talk to that network, and you got to fax. You're faxing. 2021. We're faxing. Okay.
Faxing.
Medical records over.
Yeah.
To another thing, and then they didn't get it, and you get there and they're like, we never got the fax, and you're like, you didn't get the fax. And I mean, it's like insane, the inefficiency in data sharing in the health industry. I mean, it should just be a decentralized network where you can just go, okay, which is a little scary, because then, you have to think about that for 1 second. I mean, there is some security and some, privacy things that would have to be, for me to be comfortable, and by the way, there are blockchain companies who are working on the security and the privacy issues around, the fact that it is decentralized, and, anyone could find the hashtag that would be this long that you would have to understand that there's, Jake's hashtag for that particular thing. And unless he told me, I wouldn't know that, but people don't quite understand that. But when people's names and more private information is going to start being shared, I think, it's good to know that there are blockchain companies that are working on the privacy and security protocols around that because it will be necessary.
Now, just really quickly, guys, what do you guys think of the NFT situation? Because I mean, I've done 3 episodes. I did a series of episodes on NFTs because I was fascinated with them. And once I understood what an NFT was, which is basically a digital baseball card, I'm like, okay, got it. It's a baseball card. It's a comic book.
Yeah.
It's what it is. So I put up some NFTs just for fun and sold out. I was like, wait a minute. How does this work? And my NFTs that I sold I have the distinct honor of having the very first filmmaking tutorials ever uploaded to YouTube.
Cool.
I have a series of 6 of them, and they were all up there. And I showed the link and everything, and I sold the first 3, and then I've uploaded the other 3. And I had interviewed with the guys at Latawana who NFT'd their feature, and they're not selling their distribution rights, but you're able to buy basically shares in their movie. And then whatever money comes in gets out there. And then Kevin Smith is selling his entire distribution for his latest film on that, whatever he's doing there. What do you guys think of NFTs and how it affects the film industry? Just out of curiosity. I know that's not what your company does, but this is just a curious question.
Jake?
Well, and it's funny. I wouldn't say that we don't do anything with NFTs because NFTs are tokens. And we operate in tokens, right? And so while we see greater application of fungible tokens to a film where you're creating Jake's movie token and you're creating 100 of those and each one represents 1% of the total share of Jake's movie token, it's still a token. And I think that the core concepts that you need to understand to buy and interact with NFTs are the core concepts you need to understand to use any blockchain application. And so to that regard, it's a rising tide, raises all ships, because the more people that learn about this and become comfortable with the fundamentals of the technology, the better. I think at the end of the day, there are things that come up with NFTs where people are like, NFTs can do this, they can do that. Tokens can do that. It doesn't have to be an NFT to do it. It's tokens. And so, we focus, and NFTs are flashy because of the dollar amount that comes up with some of the sales. And, I think it's a very particular audience that's very excited about that. And, it's a specific pool of people that are actually transacting and purchasing NFTs. It's not, it's actually a very small number of people in the whole, of the total population that are actually purchasing. But they're collectibles, right? It comes down to, it's a collectible item, merchandise, things like that. And that's great. It's really interesting how it's evolving in the gaming space, and how these tokens can be used to unlock different things. And that's exciting to see that evolve. And I think that's going to be in the next couple of years where it's going to continue to get exciting is in gaming, right? Because video games, the whole world of, I bought this game for $150. I'm playing it, and now I have to purchase,
in-app purchases
things I need to play. Yeah. But then you don't own those things, right? It's stuck. It's limited to just that game. They're not transferable. That's a problem in itself. But we just keep going back to, the more people become comfortable with tokens, the better for our standpoint, because that is what grows the technology. We, at this point, you mentioned, that there's a lot of the not boring stuff, or the boring aspects of blockchain or applications like with healthcare. We focus on the boring stuff in the film industry, and I'm fine with that because, we're nerds, and like I said, I'm an attorney. I like the boring stuff. I find it fascinating, and so what we do isn't necessarily sexy, videos and flashy stuff that's selling for millions of dollars, but we think it's a tool that can really help this industry and help independent creators across the board, whether or not you're tech savvy.
Yeah, and look what the NBA has been doing with NBA Hot Shots, and now and Major League Baseball's coming out with their like digital packs, and those digital packs are just like flying off the shelves and things like that. When do you think we're going to see, Marvel's NFTs? Like, when are we going to start? Because it's coming. It's coming. There's no question it's coming.
It might be tomorrow. I think Fox has announced they're making a big investment, and it's an inevitability. But when you look at it in that regard, it's it's just an extension of their merchandise division.
Yeah,
and it's just more merchandise and
with no cost, with very little cost of manufacture.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's a good thing in the long run.
Yeah, because everything's digital now, right? So we've been going into the digital world for decades now, and so one, I think, challenge, especially for art, is how do you rarefy and make digital art meaningful and worth something. And so I think that NFTs are, valuable in that way, because then you can, create value in a new way, especially for digital art. And I think that the studios, they've got all they're the 1,000-pound gorilla sitting in the room, and they just sort of wait till everybody else figures it out, and then they just go, okay, we'll do that. Here's the money, make it happen. Let's do it tomorrow.
And it also took them 12 years to a major studio to come up with a streaming service. So there's that. They're not fast. They're not fast.
No, they're not fast because it's bureaucratic, and there's so much bureaucracy inside of a studio. If you've ever worked at one, which I had the pleasure of doing when I first came out of the gate, with my career, and realized that I don't think I could remain employable in that atmosphere. So I just thought the indie road would be better. But I feel that the road we're on with building applications on blockchain technology is going to aid in the evolution of our industry. And that's really what we're dedicated to. And that slow and steady wins the race. Right.
Oh, there's no question. And to bring it back to where we started with the 1996 analogy, remember when the internet first popped out, how many people were scared of putting their credit card in?
Oh, yeah.
And that's the same thing with how many people are afraid of buying an NFT or buying a token or putting their, that's where we're at right now. And I think it will change probably faster than any of us think. It's starting to already grow. And even in the small time that I've been aware of this, and I knew about Bitcoin, obviously, like everybody else has probably, but understanding this, I've only really got into this deeply probably the last 6 months to a year. And just in that time, things have changed so dramatically and will continue to change as things go forward. So it's exciting. I'm excited about what you guys are doing. Thank you for fighting the good fight and trying to help creators and filmmakers out there. So I appreciate you guys. Again, if anybody wants to check you guys out, where do they go?
Breaker.io. And watch Trust Machine, the story of blockchain.
Yes, with is it Ted? It's Ted? No, it's Bill. Bill from Bill and Ted. Bill S. Preston Esquire. Let's do it correctly.
Indeed, he's the director extraordinaire.
Yes, thank you so much.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No. Yeah,
thanks for having us.
No, thank you so much for being on the show, guys. I appreciate it.